Hello and welcome to School Life Unpacked with me, your host, Natasha Curtis Ego. Today I have a wonderful guest who's here with me to discuss, I'd like to say, a yesteryears of education and how it's progressed and developed through the years. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hello, I'm Linda Cross. I started teaching in the beginning of the 1960s. I retired 15 years ago. So I've seen a lot of changes in the time that I was in education.
If we start at the beginning, what made you decide to be a teacher and what kind of sparked that interest?
My mother, basically, she wanted to be a teacher, and because the war came along, she was sent off to a munitions factory and couldn't do her teacher training. So she saw me as her way of getting into teaching, which I did. I have to say I was a very conscientious teacher. There were other things that I think I would have preferred to do, but I used art, when I taught art, as my medium for enjoying myself and my creative side. But I ended up teaching English as my speciality.
So what years did you teach?
I have done from infants to, and I don't know whether anybody remembers the YTS scheme, which was for youngsters who'd left school, had no jobs, and so they were trained by Essex County Council into the world of work. And I was a life and social skills tutor.
Ooh.
How to write a letter, how to present yourself properly at an interview, and all those sorts of things that youngsters just hadn't even thought about.
I suppose we don't, do we? We just sort of assume we'll be prepared for the big wide world.
Yeah. And I used to say to them, you do realise the minute you walk into a room, a decision is made whether you're suitable or not. And it's your body language, whether you've got clean shoes and clean fingernails. And they all used to go, what? But it's true. That's what somebody looks at.
This is true. It's very true. So as you know, School Life Unpacked is a podcast with the aim to help parents as they prepare their children to start reception and then looking at school life as a whole. How would you say we could best start our conversation about that? As in, if you're reflecting on how infant schools were when you taught and how they've developed, could we discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, the whole of education has changed phenomenally since I started. In the 60s, when I was training, it was very much a free approach to everything. When I qualified, Lady Plowden's report had come into being, which was child-centred education, which caused an awful lot of infant teachers to faint on the spot because it was so informal, whereas they were used to rote learning, children behaving themselves, sitting at desks when they came in and getting up from the desk when they went out, and that was it. No movement in the classroom and very little creativity. Everything came from a book.
That sounds the polar opposite of how reception is now.
Yes,
when I go to pick up my
very
son,
much
it's
so. Yeah.
very child-led. Everything is about the children's enjoyment and learning through play.
Yes, yeah. There was no play.
No?
Well, how can I put it? Play was constructive play in the fact that you had a tapestry needle and binker thread and you made little mats. You had blocks that you could thread onto a piece of thread, but it was for counting purposes. It wasn't for decorative purposes. So decoration was a bowl of tulips or daffodils. It's a nice sunny day. Let's paint the day. Well, it's a bit wide, isn't it? You know, the sun at the top in the corner there, yellow, and the green at the bottom for the grass, and that was it. You'd made a picture.
As you've seen it develop and change, do you think that's been for the better? Or
Oh, the development has been phenomenal, yes, and for the better. But it's always a case of you throw the baby out with the bathwater because some good things did go. In fact, I always bang on about nature study. I didn't particularly like teaching it. However, I do realise that it gave children an insight into what a leaf was and what that green stuff was down on the floor. Now you have children who don't know what a cow is. They don't know that cows eat grass. And so we lost that link with nature And of course, now we have all the environmental problems that children are now being directed towards, but there was a stage when it was oh no, we have to do physics, we have to do electricity, we don't need nature study anymore.
I think a few schools are trying to bring back nature studies, aren't
Yes,
they? I
yes,
mean,
yeah,
they've got nature areas, but I suppose it's
yeah,
restricted to schools that have a bit of greenery. Quite a few
yeah.
don't have that
I mean,
greenery.
I've taught in all sorts of environments. My first school was in the East End of London, down West Ferry Road, and it was rough. It was the usual brick building, 4 stories high, concrete playground, and not a tree in sight. So those children didn't even see out of the windows because the windows were so high up, they couldn't see out of them. I don't think I could either. So the only thing you did see might be a cloud. End of. I ended up teaching in a school in a wood, log cabins in a wood, and we just wandered around in the woods doing nature study. It was fabulous. So that, one set of privileged children and a set of children who really just knew nothing.
I guess it's all about areas, isn't it? And
Yes, yeah.
whether an area has the finances, the space, and when that school was built, whether they considered what children need.
Unfortunately, in all our lives, all aspects of our lives, money is key. And it certainly is in education. It is one of the least funded areas. The NHS takes an enormous amount, and it needs it, I think. Education is just cut and cut and cut. And it's TAs who stay for extra time, it's parents who come in and help, and that's how it runs. It runs on a shoestring. Although millions go into it, I just don't understand what happens to the money.
I suppose training, maintaining those kind of
Yeah,
things are where the finances eventually have to go,
yeah.
which is really sad to think about.
And it's not always on children. That's the unfortunate thing.
I suppose because many things make a school.
I mean, one of the things that Lady Plowden tried to bring in was the use of schools outside school hours. So using like badminton groups going in and using the school halls and having night schools in schools, which I used to go to when I finished my secondary education and I wanted some more qualifications. I couldn't stay on. So I used to go to night school. So I would have a job during the day. And then at 7 o'clock, I'd turn up to a school and somebody would be teaching history, somebody would be teaching geography, or there'd be an art class. And so I'd get home about 9 o'clock at night.
But that's the benefit, right? But we don't, I think we do some evening classes and adult classes,
Yeah.
but I suppose maybe school
Yeah.
buildings aren't utilised in the same
Yeah.
way.
But that's what has all gone. The cost of night schools, evening classes became quite prohibitive, and councils didn't want to run them. So a few exist, but not like it used to be.
Oh, it's so sad when you think of the things that we lose.
Yeah.
But if we bring it back to reception and introducing your child to reception, what would you find, like, how was it done let's go from when you first started doing it to then how did it develop when you had the national curriculum? Because that kind of had little rules that you had to follow and every child had to meet certain criteria. With that idea of standardization being more formalized, was that benefit to reception or was that just because you said it made some teachers panic?
Yeah. Oh,
because
yeah.
we now had a different way of
Well,
looking
you had
at
a system whereby children turned up, you registered a child with a school, you turned up on the said day, the child went inside the school gates and the parents stayed outside, and that was it. And you didn't see your mummy or daddy, mainly mummies, until the end of day. And you were just lost. You didn't know what was happening. And there you were, a little one who was told, don't cry, don't show yourself up. And you had to say please and thank you. You didn't know where the toilets were. You didn't know if you were going to get fed when you were hungry. There was just no link, no communication at all.
Oh, that's so sad. I know that now they're trying really hard to get children to be really settled,
Yes,
and
yeah,
if you're fortunate enough, you go into the
yeah,
school, you have a look around, and you get to meet the teachers, and the children can sort of run around and
yeah,
have a feel of their new environment. Because reception is a big step, especially if you've only done
yeah.
nursery for 3 hours, and now you're going
Well,
into
yeah,
full-time school.
there was no nursery, so school was your first introduction to being in a group of other children, apart from children who were in your street who you played with.
Sorry, there was no nursery.
There was no nursery.
So when do you know when nurseries? When was
I have to say, I don't know. I know that my son and daughter went to a nursery, but it was a private nursery run by a lady in her front room. It wasn't. It wasn't in a school, or it wasn't organised by the council.
okay?
I can't say when they became statutory, and I'm not even sure if they are statutory.
No, they're not. I think you can choose if you want your child to go
Yes,
to nursery, and then
yes,
you get funding for your child to
yeah,
go to nursery
yeah,
from the age of
yeah,
3. And then 2, if you're working, it's slightly different. If you're working, you can apply
mm,
for hours when they're
yeah,
2. But no, it's not mandatory, it's not statutory. You have to
yeah.
just,
So yes, there wasn't any nursery. So it was from being with mummy all day to being in a school without mummy all day.
how did they cope?
You did because everybody else did it. You knew intrinsically that that was the way things were. So that's what you did. Some children were more successful than others. My mother used to say that when she took my brother to school and I trotted along next to her, I used to cry because he went into school and I couldn't, and I wanted to. When it was my turn to go in through these gates, I cried because I wanted to get out of those gates. So, but you just adapt. You see that everybody else is doing it, so you copy. And that's what children are very good at. And they hide their feelings by copying what others do, unless they can't cope with it and they just break out into tears.
Oh gosh, that must have been hard as a. So when you were teaching infants, did you find that there were things in place to support the children
Yes, by
in
the
the
time
school?
I came round to teaching infants, I mean, I did infants, juniors, secondary, and as I say, young adults. Um, the infants were the hardest of all, because the preparation that you had to put in place, because with the Plowden report came no sitting in rows, no book learning. I mean, can you imagine infants with a book in front of them and knowing what to do with it? Um, so it was very much new to all of us, except those who had been to good colleges and had been trained properly. I did not go to a good college in the fact that it was a top college, but it was freedom rules everything. We don't have structure. The most part of my teacher education, my training, was with people who said, go to the library and find out. And we asked our tutor once, could we have some lessons on how to teach reading, please? And he just said, well, why do you need to know that? You just get a book. And we said, no, there must be structures, there must be things that you have to put in place. And we were sent to a delightful lady. She was Jewish with green hair and very flamboyant. And she was a marvel at teaching infants. She was just so in the moment with them. Fantastic. And she taught in 2 hours, she taught us all we knew about how to teach reading.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I did not learn to read until I was about 8.
Okay.
And that was because of specific problems in my father moved around a lot, so I would be at a new school every 6 or 9 months. And so nobody ever got hold of me to teach me. And my parents certainly didn't think I needed to be taught to read. I don't know why, because my father was a great reader. But no, I don't ever remember them reading a storybook to me or sitting down with me to read Janet and John.
But then I think a lot of parents didn't realise the importance of sitting with children and reading,
Yeah,
and the importance of your child seeing you read
yeah,
a book.
yeah,
Because I think it was like the book trust that really pushed that, and there's so many campaigns based with the book trust on getting
yeah.
parents to just spend those 5 minutes reading. And I don't think, because to be fair, I don't remember my mum reading with me. I remember seeing her doing homework with my brother, so I assume she did it with me, but I don't remember it.
Yeah.
So but I
Yeah.
think now they really try and encourage your child comes home with a book in reception and you read together, even if they're not reading yet. They try really hard to get them to love having a book,
Yeah.
know how to use a book.
Yeah. My son-in-law, when I'm with my granddaughters and I'm saying, well, I've got a book in the library. If you go and get that, that will. And my son-in-law says, what do you need a book for? It's all on the iPad. Just look on the iPad. And I have great reservations over that because I love holding a book and looking at the pictures and being able to refer back to and put things together, which you can't really do. Yes, you can if you're an expert, but I'm not. And I just find looking at these little pictures of no interest. You can't see that, oh, in that painting, it looks as though it's all textured and it looks as though it's all funny.
Yeah.
And so therefore you think, I want to go and see that.
I suppose technology it's moving so fast and it's being introduced and forced is maybe a strong word, but it kind of forced into our everyday life that the original things that are so important, like books, are being pushed to the back burner. You're always hearing of libraries closing and things
Yeah.
like that, and you do feel sad.
But it is the easy option, isn't it? Because, oh, mummy, will you take me to the library? Well, it's raining. No, let's save that for another day. We can look at it on the iPad. We can look at it on the iPhone.
Ask Professor Google. He knows everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Although, talking about technology, I think it is amazingly helpful. I don't think it should be everything that we use, but it's so helpful, especially if for reading, for example, if you're not very confident, you can ask Google to pronounce a word.
Yeah.
So it has got its place.
Oh, yes, I'm not decrying it, but again, it's the throwing the baby out with the bathwater in the fact that in some areas it takes over. So fine motor skills are not developed. The joy of using your hands and creating something with your hands. The school that I ended up at, we used to have an open day every year and people could come and look at children's work and walk around the school. And I was so incensed with teachers who did not put up the poorer children's work because no, it's not very good. I'm not putting that up. Everybody had something up in my room. In fact, I ran out of walls and so I had to bring in boards and put them down the middle of the classroom so that everybody had, oh, I did that picture of in science, I did that picture in history. And so they had examples to show and be proud of. That's the thing, their creativity was them and they were proud of it.
Now we have tapestry, which is sent to us, and which is so you get well, not all schools have tapestry, but some schools have tapestry, and we get a little ping when something new is up, and we get to see what our children are doing. But I think I'm a little bit on your side. It would be lovely to walk through the classroom and see your child's work up and them talk to you about it and tell you, this is what I did and I used paint, mummy. And
when you said tapestry to me, I'm thinking, oh, we only did cross stitch.
So tapestry is an app. Different schools use different ones. The only one I'm aware of is tapestry. But the nice thing is, so we had it in nursery. So I got to see roughly every week what my son was doing and his development and progress. And then the teacher was so kind, she'd write a little note about what was happening. And so you knew. And then it also told you what level of learning they were looking at and how they were trying to use the random, I don't know, I can't think of something now, sort of like spaghetti painting would relate to fine motor skills. And so you as a parent could then make the connection, because sometimes you see what they're doing and you have no idea what it's meant to be, but when you're told why they're doing it, you feel a bit more confident. So that's the tapestry.
Right.
Not the cross stitch.
For me, art is pure enjoyment. It's creativity. It's you using you to make something. And a computer can do that, but you didn't do that all by yourself. A machine did that for you. True. And when it comes to colour mixing, you can get some fantastic colours on the computer. But when you put blobs of paint together and, oh, look, it's gone blue. Ah, What did I use to make that blue? Oh, and oh, I've put some white in it. It's gonna. So you're experimenting and you're making things happen, not the computer. And that's where I sort of come to an argumentative stage. I think it's fine for maths and it's fine for English, not all, but for some. And I just think to myself, if this recently, or this morning in actual fact, I read that the Spanish government are stopping children from using tablets in schools. Under 12, they are not allowed to have tablets. And I think I am right in saying the Japanese do not allow children under 15 to use calculators. So the technology side has its benefits, definitely, and we've all got to be au fait with it. Me, no, because I am a technophobe, but it's going to be second nature to children. I, in fact, think to myself that there will come a time when babies are born and they will have a transplant put into their hand and it will be a computer that will do everything for them. And they just look at their hand, oh yeah, done that.
Possibly. Possibly. I mean, children are using technology younger and younger.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. Most toddlers can navigate an iPad or a phone or some kind of tablet, which can seem scary. I feel, again, it has its place. If it's educational and they're learning, then wonderful. But I suppose at the same time, you're losing other skills. So it's the balance.
Yes, it is keeping the right balance. And again, because it's not one size fits all, each school can do what it likes. If you have somebody who is a really driven head with computer technology, then the focus of that school might be that. If you've got somebody who is driven with creative crafts, then the focus is that. But all the time, you've got to have maths and English going along because they are the basics of learning and moving on, really. If you haven't got those skills, you struggle.
This is true. Do you think enough I want to say standardization of those subjects is there in schools? Because it seems like some schools have much higher reading averages than others, and you would think that if we're all running from this national curriculum that tells you that this is what our children should be learning, why isn't that happening? Why are we not? I know everyone's an individual, but how are we not all at least coming out of school at the level we should be?
The unfortunate thing is that you are addressing issues that are area dominated. If you live in the south of England, maybe the children there are better readers than children who are in the north of England. Why that is? Because money, poor housing, poor everything in the north. Not everything, but you do have disparaging situations that will make differences why one area is better or worse than another. And it isn't just that the parents, for however much they try, are not going to change that.
But surely, as a government, we should be able to have a standard. We should have a standard. We should have this balance that everybody leaves school. And my understanding of schools is that was the point of it, wasn't it? That everybody comes out of school being able, you sit your exams, you may not all get A's, B's, but you come out, everybody being able to read maths and science. Those are your foundation.
The unfortunate thing is that outside influences dominate. I haven't read it yet. But apparently Bridget Phillipson, who is the new education minister, is going to change the national curriculum. She's going to deconstruct it. Okay. Well, it's taken a long, long time to construct it. Amanda Spielman, who has just retired as head of Ofsted, says that we are the best in the world for reading and writing. And I question that, but she knows more than me. I know nothing. But we are the envy of the world for our standard of reading. Now, if that is going to be deconstructed, it might get better, it might get worse. And I just think if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But we haven't had a reform of the national curriculum as a whole since a long, long time ago. So maybe...
Well, there have been a lot of changes in my time that every year there would be something different.
But I think the version that they use is... I want to say 2014.
Yeah.
And it was meant to be reformed last year.
Yeah.
And it never happened, did it?
Yeah. Again, money. Where are you going to get the money from to do all of that and plough finances into that instead of into the schools where it's needed? And I don't think that is a consideration that they make, but that is a consideration that I think is paramount, because nothing happens if you haven't got the finance, if you haven't got somebody at the top who is driven by wanting good change, not change for change's sake. And that's what I feel is happening here.
Hopefully it's good change. We'll be positive.
We
We'll
don't.
say it.
Who knows? We just
What's
won't know
released.
until it happens.
With that big change coming to our schools, I keep hearing transition. This is like the buzzword of this year, and we're talking about transitioning children into school and having them school ready. And I think every council is looking at producing documents to help parents transition their children into reception. What does the word transition mean to you? And how do you think, is it just a buzzword for now, or is it a genuine need?
I have to say, I think it's overplayed. I've talked to several people who have got little ones, some of them coming up for starting school in September. And one of the people I talked to was most interesting. I think I've forgotten what I was going to say about her. She said, our school has been so good, we'd have home school visits. The teacher has come to the house and chatted and had tea parties, and I'm thinking, wow, what's happening to the rest of the class while all this is going on? So a supply teacher was paid to go and look after the class. Money. You can't keep on with that. And then it depends on a head who is going to think, well, that's a good use of my money. And another one who might think, I can do better with that. So everything is to an individual school. And that's why parents are so keen at looking at exam results, SAT results, because you've got a good school there. Look at the results that they get. But is it? I mean, I know schools that have good SAT results and the parents are not happy because it's too formal, because it's too concentrated. I've been reading with fascination about a school in Newham. It's a secondary school, and their catchment area is quite poor, but the children who go to this school are getting better grades than children at Harrow and Eton. Why? Because they practice the trivium, which is the ancient Greeks' way of teaching. Children are joining queues to sign up for these classes after school where they debate and they think of logic. These children are just fantastic debaters. We used to call it public speaking in the old days, which went out of the window. But it's coming back, and these kids are really, really thinking this is great. We have our opportunity to say, to speak, to do. And it's another way of learning, but they're not writing anything in a book.
Maybe education does need reform.
Everything needs reform. You can settle back quite happily and feel very proud of yourself that you've done a good job. And then once you've been using it for a year or two, you might think, well, I could tweak this and I could do that. That's rubbish. It's not working at all. But I'm paying lip service to something that everybody says is fabulous. And you might not think it is. Therefore, you teach it badly. Somebody who likes it might teach it really well. So it's horses for courses, isn't it?
If we were to look at, I'm trying to bring it back to where we were discussing bits and pieces of things like the role of social emotional learning. How does that play into our new school systems?
I think society as a whole, social and emotional standards and changes in society have been immense. In my day, children who were turning up for school came from solid in inverted commas, families with a father, a mother. You now have children turning up with no dad in a family, no mum in a family, several dads in a family, several this, that and the other in a family. Everything has changed. And so their stability at home is now very different. For some, not all, but for some, it's very different. And so you have to be aware of that. So when coming back to transitioning, when you are accepting children into your school and trying to build up a record of their short little lives, of how they've coped with things, you've got all sorts of things to cope with. It isn't just, they've got a mum, they've got a dad works here, mum works there, brothers, sisters. No, you might have 10 brothers and sisters, but they're scattered all over the place. You don't know that.
Yeah.
And so this is your way of finding out without being too intrusive, and also giving the parents the confidence to know that it's not gossip. It won't be talked about all over the school.
And it's not to judge them, it's just so that
Yes,
you're better equipped with
yes,
knowing a
yeah,
little bit about your
yeah,
new little
yeah,
person in your
yeah,
class.
yeah. Yeah, you know why they've behaved so badly. You know, but other parents don't. So you'll have other parents coming to you saying, when are you going to do something about that boy? He keeps on pulling my daughter's hair. I am fed up with this. But you know that that little boy, has not been socialised. He doesn't know. And you can't face off to a parent and say, don't you bring your son here. Don't you bring your daughter here doing that. You can't. You
No.
used to be able to. You could expel them before they'd even started.
That seems so severe.
It was because you conformed. Everybody had to conform to the set plan. Now, we have all sorts of different confirmations going on because you all have your own agendas, and they are not the agendas that everybody wants to know.
So in some ways, I love this idea that everything has changed and everybody can be themselves and bring that into families looking slightly different to what we're used to, because I think there are benefits in many ways. But I can also see how in certain situations, because it's not public knowledge that things are different, and it can cause
Yeah.
frictions. Forced accepting of everything
Yeah.
could be hard to swallow, I think, for a lot of parents, because
Well,
some parents,
it's resented.
yeah,
You know, I'm being made to do that, and I don't agree. But if I say I don't agree, I might be asked to take my child away. I mean, my head at my lovely little school, anybody who came who wasn't happy and decided I'm paying for this, so I'm going to complain. Fair enough, and they would complain mega, and so my employer would sit there at her desk and say, well, do you know, Mrs. So-and-so, if you're not happy, please come and see me tomorrow and I will help you find an alternative school.
oh, imagine to be able to say that to people.
And so the thought then dawned that, you know, I've already been to 10 schools with this child. This is my final chance. I don't want to lose this one. So they would conform. But yeah, maybe they did have a genuine argument that it was their child was not being treated fairly, but it wasn't. It was just that they wanted that bit extra, and everybody wants that bit extra for their child.
I think that's so hard for a teacher, especially now classroom sizes in a normal school are 30 children, and you see them doing the absolute best they can to give all those children
Yeah.
a little bit of attention. I guess as parents, we only see our child, and our child is the most important, precious
Yeah.
little person in that
Yeah.
space, and we don't have the capacity to think, actually, there's 29 of them.
And then you have the other end of the spectrum where you'll never see a parent because they never come near or by.
Does
And
that
you
still
could-
happen? I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You can write letters, you know, looking forward to seeing you at our meeting, blah, blah, blah. And they never turn up. I was too busy.
I suppose now everybody works. Work commitments
Yeah.
are.
I once had a little boy. He was so sad. Nobody liked him. The other children didn't like him. He was very quiet. His mother was a top civil servant. I mean, I don't know what his father did, but his father nearly punched me on the nose once because I wasn't doing enough for his son. The mother never turned up because she was too busy at work. And this poor little boy was farmed out to various activities during the holidays. He never ever had a holiday with his parents. They never took him anywhere. And he was just a very sad, lonely child. And I used to say to my boss, I said, can't we get her in? Can't we ask them to come and talk to them that, you know, he is not really developing in the way that he could do and should do because he's a bright boy. She wrote, I wrote. And in the end, you just think, well, we can't turn the tide. We're not Canute. We can't do it. And I often think about what happened to him.
I suppose we, as parents, need to be more proactively involved in our children's education in
Yes.
some ways,
Yeah.
as in
Yeah.
be able to have those conversations
Yeah.
with our teachers and have that open line of communication. Yes, we
Yeah.
dropped them off, but, you know, still be able to feel that we can, and them to feel that if something happened, they can say, oh,
Yeah.
by the way,
Yeah.
you know, so-and-so was doing this today. Is that normal?
Yeah.
Or
I have to say, I was in a unique position at the end of my career. However, at the beginning, I think I had West Ferry Road in Poplar, where I saw very few parents. Then I had Barkingside, which was a bit mixed, but had some very interesting children. So I have done kind of a round and about a mixture and seeing the differences. But in all of it, you have a good parent shining through. I had parents at my last school, because it was a fee paying school. They were not wealthy. They had 3 children. Mum went to work as a care assistant. I don't know what Dad did, but they were so focused on their children's education, they spent everything on their children's education.
Oh, wow.
So, but of course, when they finished paying fees, that was great. And their children went to grammar school and university, and I believe have got good jobs. So it worked. But I also know of parents who paid out a fortune for their children who've got children that still don't do anything at 26.
So maybe it's actually just being interested in your child and supporting them. As
Yeah.
simple as that. It's
Yeah.
not even about fee paying, non-fee paying,
No.
just
It's what you feel is best for your child. Sometimes it isn't, but it's what you feel. So you're bound to do that. But along the way, on your journey of being with that child, you might realise that didn't do that right, or I'm glad I did that.
oh, true. Going back to you being a teacher, which would be your favorite ages to teach, and how did you find managing? You said infants was
Oh, infants was so hard. It ages you. I once did a supply at a school, and I had a reception, and we had all this free learning and working in groups, and I prepared 6 sets of work for the 6 tables, and so the children rotated round the table, so there was a set of work for each group as they came round, and I thought that will take them at least quarter of an hour to complete that. In 5 minutes it was done. And I wasn't prepared for the next bit. Oh, I was on my knees by the end of that day. Then I had secondary children who were the pits. Rude, the language was horrible. And because I was a supply, teachers who were regular teachers thought, I'll have a day off today. I'm not going in and teaching that class. And so I would get them. And I'd walk in there and it would be all sorts of name calling and saying rude things to me. Miss, do you know I won't say what is, can you explain it to me? And I said, well, get yours out and show me. And, give as good as you get. And I said, you don't really want to do history today, do you? No. What do you want to do? And they would come up with things. Can you tell us about sensible things? And so we would just have discussions about what they didn't know that they thought they ought to know. And I really enjoyed that. They were 15, 16, and I really enjoyed talking to them. The class I hated most, I had to teach twice, as year 2 and year 6. And I loathed them, and they loathed me. And
why?
they was just so naughty.
Okay.
Not nastily naughty, but they loved to have a joke. They loved to play tricks and all this sort of thing. And they wound me up terribly. I said, I'm here to teach you. Your parents are paying me money to do this, so shut up and sit down and listen. They would drive me to that. And they would just, all right, Mrs. Cross, and they'd walk away. One of them sadly died when he was 20. He had stomach cancer. And so the rest of the class got together and had a memorial bench made for George. And they had a celebration in the pub that all these kids used to go to when they'd finished school before they went to university. They got temporary jobs in this pub. And the landlord there said, yes, you can put the bench in the garden. So that was great. And they invited me along, and I thought, no, I'm not going. They're going to say, I hated you. And I'm going to say, I hated you too. And I got myself into a real state. I got there and they all ran at me and put their arms around me, Mrs. Cross. And they were just delightful adults. They were lovely. And I remember when you did that. But you never meant it. You were always fair.
See, I think we do. We always remember the strict teachers, and I think sometimes we appreciate the boundaries.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
appreciate that they kept us in
Yeah.
check and we learned something.
Yeah. I learnt an awful lot. They learnt an awful lot. I don't know whether it was the right things. um, and I learnt not to make judgments as quickly as I had done in the past. And I've been carrying on through life doing that, not making judgments of things that I would once upon a time think, no. I now think, well, there are reasons why. And if you can teach children to do that, I think that is one of the greatest things of education, not to be judgmental.
Yes. But I suppose
But you
that
can't teach that as maths, can you?
No, and you can't grade it.
No.
You won't have any statistics of saying how good they're doing. But I suppose teaching it's sort of so many things. And yes, maths, English, science, they're all really important. But it's nice to know that coming out of school, there are people who learnt things just from that meeting, having that one teacher who taught them something outside of the norm.
I don't think that was me. Although I did have one child come back to me when she was 20s, and she said, I've come back to have a look at the school, Mrs. Cross. It hasn't changed a bit. I said, no. I said, I have, though. I've worn myself out. And she laughed, and she said that she'd done a degree in history and got a first class honours. I said, well done, well done. She said, it was you, Mrs. Cross, made me do that because you taught me to love Egyptology so much that I just went on to university and did it.
See, you made a difference.
I made, yes, one person. And in Egyptology, I mean, yeah, who cares?
No. So if you could sum up having been a teacher, the best bits and the tips you would give parents coming from a teacher's perspective, and what would you say? Let's start there. I've got one more question after that.
The best bits for me were the people I met along the way. I met some really dedicated, lovely people, just nice people. My advice to parents is just not to get stressed by it all. Just take it as it comes and just sit down and think logically and think, what would you do in that child situation? If you were still convinced they were wrong, then you would say so. And if they were right, say, well, yeah, I do agree with you. Can we work this out? But not to come stomping into a school saying, I'm fed up with the way you're treating my child, which is what some people do because they don't know the whole story. Children can be very clever at manipulating a plot, but just to take time and listen. And I think that's what parents need to do, not be judgmental. Yes, you're not too happy, and I wasn't with schools that my children have been at, but I thought, well, it's only for a year. They're only going to be with that teacher for a year. There are loads of others out there. And if I don't think they're learning that in the way I think they should, I'll just put some books in front of them, talk about it, and see if I can make an improvement or not. And you just carry on.
Just carry on.
You just carry on.
Don't stress and just carry on. And it's true, I suppose, in most schools, your child will only really be with that particular teacher for 1 year. So
yeah,
that is something to consider.
Yeah.
Are there any tips on preparing your little people for reception that you think would be useful now, having seen how it's developed, or do you think that's not needed?
Well, always to talk positively. I mean, I say always to talk positively about school. My mother would always say to me, when they get you in that school, they'll sort you out. Right. And so before you get there, you've got, what are they going to do to me? To be encouraging all the time and to be supportive. And if you can go into the school and help, not necessarily in your child's classroom, but in another classroom with just reading or helping children to go on a trip or doing cycling proficiency, that sort of thing. And they see that you're involved with it, you're part of it. And I think that's the important thing, to see that it's not just something in isolation. And when they start the first day, I mean, it is a traumatic occasion. Don't make it any worse. But I sort of say, you'll be all right, you'll be all right. Because does that mean that I've got something that's not going to be all right? It's hard. And if they can go with a friend, that's a good thing. Let's go in a little group and they're all expecting and great things and they're talking to each other about it. And no, don't fuss around at the door.
That's the second time we've been told that. We had a nursery teacher come in and she said, try not to cry as you leave them. It's really hard, but try not to cry because then your child will worry. And try and be, like you said, positive. Allow them to go in and enjoy this new experience without your worries being their worries.
It's their first steps to independence. And if it goes badly and keeps on going badly, then you're going to have problems later on, because there'll be another transition stage when they go to secondary school. Or if you move house as another change. I mean, I went to 9 schools, so I had 9 new teachers to get used to. But I think I was insensitive to it by then. It is just showing that it's okay, not crying and, I'm so worried about them going to school. No, you're not. You're happy. They're going to have a lovely time. And I once went to a Mother's Day service at my son's class when he was an infant. And we all sat there and they all did their little pieces and they all came and gave Mummy a present. And then there was coffee. And I started to go towards the door because I had to get back to my class. And I saw my son, his eyes were following me everywhere. By the time I got out of that classroom, he was clinging onto my skirt, crying.
Oh, no.
I was so embarrassed. Here's that teacher and her son can't handle it. That's what you don't want. You want to leave them smiling and happy. I'll see you later.
Yeah. But I think it's tricky for them. Little people with big emotions.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the trick.
So it's just being positive all the way through. But you can't always be positive all the way through. Sometimes there are negative bits to say, well, you won't be seeing me till 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock or whatever.
But I suppose you spin it. You say you get to see me at that time and we can talk all about your exciting day with new people, new children.
I mean, initially you might do bribes, but you can't keep that up forever. But yes, it's just trying to instill in them a sense of confidence, and seeing you being confident is one of the things that I think helps most. If they see a mother who's trembling and worried and anxious, they know.
Yes, they know.
Yeah.
That's very true. They know. Well, thank you so much for your time and chatting with us, and hopefully we'll have you again if you're willing.
Well, hopefully I haven't given you a whole load of drivel.
No.
But I have to say, may I just say that young mums, young families today, I am so glad I'm not one of you, because you are facing really turbulent times, and just focusing on your child's education is enough of a worry without everything else that's going on. But it does pass. You will get confident. They will get confident. And hopefully it will be an enjoyable experience, instead of experiences of children in the past who said, I hated school. I want them all to say, I loved it, it was great, and remember their teachers' names.
I think you do remember. You remember the good teachers, or the teachers who enjoyed their company.
Yeah.
And taught you interesting things, even if it wasn't subject related. But I love that you said it's their first step into independence. And I think that's a really beautiful way to look at reception. It's not something to be scared of. It's something to celebrate.
And I think with that independence, I would say the 2 things that are most important is independence and resilience.
Yes.
Being able to get up after you've been knocked down is a great thing. So the emotional, no, I'm going to be all right.
And also change. It's that knowing that all change is good. It's good in the end. You know what I mean? It's trying to embrace that life is ever changing, and that's okay. And the resilience you build from that first step of independence teaches you that as things change, I can get back up. It's okay. Start again. Let's just keep going. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode, and we truly appreciate you listening. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, subscribe, and follow to stay updated on future episodes. We look forward to seeing you next week.